Welcome in. What do we got?
Oh, we got plenty of action. We've got some rock and roll. We've got some Irish horror and more. And we hope you're ready to talk about it. This is the Screening Room Podcast.
Are either one of these any good?
Wow, this is a good movie.
It's pretty good.
Well, the director from yesterday doesn't think so.
It stinks.
He's sorry. You waste our film.
It's so bad.
Welcome back in. She is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we're from MaddWolf.com. And we're ready to talk about big screen and streaming options this week. Let's start on the big screen.
First up this week in theaters, Christian Wolf applies his brilliant mind and illegal methods to reconstruct the unsolved puzzle of a Treasury chief's murder in The Accountant 2.
The Accountant 2. Yeah, The Accountant, I don't know, sort of a surprise hit, I don't know, a few years ago with Ben Affleck and director Gavin O'Connor. And they've worked together a few times. They were together on the one where he was a alcoholic basketball coach. And why am I'm forgetting the title of that movie here all of a sudden?
Pride and Glory.
Pardon me?
Pride and Glory, The Way Back.
The Way Back, yeah. The Way Back. And then Gavin O'Connor has done, he did that Warrior, the MMA movie years ago. So he's had some solid flicks along the resume, but this one reunites them and brings back in John Bernthal as Christian Wolf's brother Braxton, and this time the murder of an old friend who still had ties to the feds, who leaves a cryptic message as he dies, brings the boys back together, and it teams them up with an unlikely ally of Treasury Department officials. So they're not exactly used to working with the feds. But they end up doing that as they get pulled into this big conspiracy. It's pretty complicated. Not going to go through the whole thing for fear of any spoilers, but it involves a human trafficking operation, which we see a lot of movies doing that lately. Yeah. But so it leans on the same sort of elements that made the first one work, especially the chemistry between Ben Affleck and John Bernthal. They do well together. And this movie leans into the humor of it a little bit more, between the two of them, the brotherly ribbing and things like that. I think the film gets into trouble because mainly it is pretty satisfying as an action film and a mystery. It doesn't rely on the action as much as another movie we're going to talk about here in a little bit. The nonstop barrage of action. When it does do the action, the shootouts, I mean, they're well handled. Gavin O'Connor knows how to do that, but it's a mystery to piece together, and of course that falls right in with the Christian Wolf character because he's so good at puzzles and putting things together because he's neurodivergent. And I think the movie gets into trouble for me, and I'm not pretending to be a spokesman for the autism community at all, but there are a couple scenes, two scenes in particular, that really, for me, towed the line of, boy, are we making too much light of this?
We're laughing at him instead of with him.
Yes, and you may see the cat. The cat is nosing in here. Please give me some room. Yeah, and maybe treating it as a superhero that a superpower that can come and go. And then he can have fun and line dance all of a sudden because he can look at the patterns of the feet and figure it out, part of a puzzle. So, yeah, a couple of those instances I thought really got a little close to being, a little uncomfortable for me anyway. But the rest of it, I thought pretty solid. Decently put together mystery, and it does feed into the puzzle nature of how this character solves things. And it also speaks to, again, as a lot of movies have lately, for good reason, our lack of privacy. Because Christian Wolf he's got a bunch of assistants at his beck and call they're in contact with him that can do on the fly this digging through computers and find people. It's amazing the things they can dig into. How much of it is real, I don't know. Probably more than we'd like to admit. Right. On how quickly they can hack in and be looking at your computer when you're not aware of it. So there's some of that which is cool. Some of that cyber sleuthing going on behind the scenes, and lets them, mostly kids, also neurodivergent kids, get to be part of the the problem solving as well, even though they're not there on the street, blowing the bad guys away like Christian and Braxton. So I think for people, especially that liked The Accountant, the first one, and I think a lot of people do. I mean, that's one through the years that I think has held up pretty well as far as an action film. So it only sort of makes sense that they're revisiting this and fleshing out the brothers' characters a little bit more. I think it's satisfying. I think it's a well put together mystery and action when it has to be, and holds your interest. Maybe a tad long. Maybe they stretch it out just a little too much. It's a full 2 hours. Maybe could have shaved a little bit off of that. But aside from those two scenes I talk about, and really when I think back about them now, I'm not going to go into it for fear of spoilers, even though they are mostly just for fun. They're sort of unnecessary. I don't know really why they had to be there, honestly. That's especially the opening scene. Well, I'll just tell you, he's at like a dating. He's at a date, one of those dating, not a speed dating so much, but kind of like a speed dating where you're meeting a bunch of people based on an algorithm, and he redoes the algorithm because he's so good with numbers. Yeah, I just didn't think it was necessary really. But other than that, pretty satisfying. The Accountant 2 as a mystery and as an action film, and that is in theaters this weekend.
Next, a horror movie in theaters. A group of friends trapped in a time loop where mysterious foes are chasing and killing them in gruesome ways must survive until dawn to escape it. Until dawn.
This one had a pretty decent trailer. In fact, I had a friend ask me the other day if we had seen it yet, because they had seen the trailer and were pretty pulled in by this brand of horror.
Yeah, it's even right from the trailer, it feels like if somebody took the great Cabin in the Woods and turned it into a video game, right? Just the idea that like with each new level, a different monster is going to come out of that elevator and hunt you down, right? If somebody turned into a video game, which they should, which is a great idea, and then somebody just turned the video game into a movie, that is what this feels like. It's 5 friends. They're on a road trip because one of the friends' sister went missing a year ago. So they're finally just believing that she's dead, and they're sort of on this road trip to let her go. And they come across her name in the like registry of this welcome center. The welcome center seems abandoned for decades, but they find her name in the registry. And then what happens is this hourglass starts to work, and then masked marauder kills everybody. And when the last person is killed, everybody wakes back up and they realize they're in the time loop, right? And that what's going to happen the next day is a different sort of malevolent force is going to come for them all until they all die, and then they reset, and they have to figure out how to get out of that. If they can survive until dawn, then they survive. And if they don't, then they forever become trapped in this video game. So essentially they become one of the malevolent forces that comes after whoever is dumb enough next to go into this.
Yeah, and also dumb enough to ignore the warnings of the grizzled old man.
Right. Just like Cabin in the Woods. I think so. The old man at the gas station that tells them that there's trouble, people get into trouble up the road, is the great Peter Stormare, who's so good in.
Yep.
He brings this effortlessly creepy presence to anything that he's in, and he certainly does in this movie. And then the rest of the cast is really very good as well, much better than they are called on to be. Odessa Azion, who was in the reboot of Hellraiser.
Yeah.
He's kind of a standout as not the lead. The lead is named Clover. She's played by Ella Rubin. She's also good too. I mean, the whole cast, the 5 sort of good friends, they do a good job. They're asked to deliver some pretty dumb lines, and more importantly, to behave in a way that is stupid. And that's common with obviously the kind of horror movies that this is recalling. But at the same time, it's really hard to be like, there's no way you'd be taking this long right now to get the hell out of that house. There's no way. And that does kind of weigh on it a little bit. And it winds up feeling less like Cabin in the Woods and more like, I suppose appropriately enough, sort of Raccoon City, which is also a video game turned into a horror film. Which is to say that the set design never feels anything more than sort of like a Halloween haunt, something that you would pay and walk through, seasonally. And it becomes tedious. The time loop idea, repetitious after a while, becomes a little bit tedious after a while. But it's, you know what, it's fine for what it is, right? I mean, if you're not a fan of horror movies, go see Sinners. Like, that's the horror movie for you because it's a brilliant piece of cinema. If you're a huge fan of horror movies and you're just looking for something, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, it's not bad. It's just not good either. It's fine.
Yeah, remember that, was it a car insurance commercial where the woman says, "Let's go hide behind the chainsaws"? Maybe something down that road.
It is bloody. I'll give you that. It is one.
R-rated,
When I saw the trailer, I kind of thought to myself, you look at it and you think, oh, here's a PG-13 thing. It's not. There's a lot of F-bombs and a lot of blood. People explode, just blow up, scanners out of nowhere, which is fun.
Yeah.
So it's, they bring the carnage. So it's director David F. Sandberg, he did one of the Annabelle movies.
Annabelle creation, yeah,
right. And his first movie was Lights Out. And then Gary Dauberman, who wrote both of the It adaptations. He wrote both of the Nun films. I mean, he's done a bunch of sometimes just middling stuff. And then the other writer named Blair Butler, who's only made bad movies. She's only written bad films. So it's like you kind of mash that together and go, it's two people who are sometimes sort of good and one person who's bad, and that's the result. That's what you get. It's fairly middling, but there's a lot of blood and it's kind of fun and it's not very long.
Yeah, and once you get that R rating, lean into it. Lean into it. So that is Until Dawn in theaters now.
Next up, we go to Netflix. After a drug deal gone wrong, a bruised detective must fight his way through the criminal underworld to rescue a politician's estranged son, unraveling a deep web of corruption and conspiracy that ensnares his entire city. It's Havoc.
Yeah, we were talking about action. Here's your action. Man, buckle down for this. In fact, this is on Netflix, so you're watching it at home. You might want to put down some covering over the sofa because there's so much blood splatter in this movie. It actually might come through the TV and onto your sofa. Man, this is some relentless stuff. This is writer and director Gareth Evans. And if you've seen The Raid Redemption, if you've seen The Raid 2, then you know that he specializes in the gun fu. And boy, that's what this is. I mean, there is a story. It's a pretty cliched story. It's really not that important to what's happening. The point is there's gunplay and people shot to bits all over the place here. Tom Hardy is the star as Walker. He's a detective. He's definitely done his share of dirty dealings. We know this. And he's in debt to a politician. I think he's running for mayor. Lawrence Beaumont, played by Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah.
Great to see. And Walker would love a way to settle all scores and get out of his debt completely and never have to see his face again. Well, that chance comes up because Beaumont's son, Charlie, is involved in this drug deal gone way, way wrong. And the next thing you know, he's wanted dead by a very powerful crime lord. So Beaumont, Forrest Whitaker, says, "You get my son safely out of the city, and then we're square. All debts are paid." So Walker sees that as his chance, and he brings in his newbie, his partner, who's still got the integrity that Tom Hardy lost long ago, and they try to sort through all the levels of goons, guns, and bloodshed to acquire the son and get him out. And so levels, we're talking again about a gaming feel, and this movie definitely has that. It's structured so that you feel like you're moving from level to level, just shooting everything that moves as Walker tries to move around the city. And that's another good point too, because they're very careful not to name the city. You can't, the patches on the police uniform, they just say state police. The license plates of the car is very ambiguous. This is another world, although it looks very familiar. It could be like a New York or Chicago. It's very cold when this is going on, but it's an unnamed metropolis, which could be sort of like a Grand Theft Auto type thing, so that you don't know for sure where you are. You're just in this crime-ridden hellhole, and you've got to shoot your way out. So there's, man, for action lovers, and if you've seen any of the raids, then if this is your thing, buddy, it delivers.
Because I think, Gareth Evans has such an instinct with choreographing action. It feels almost ballet-like in the way that, although, I've never seen this kind of carnage in a ballet, but it's just, it's so stylized and fascinating, the way that he sets up and shoots an action sequence, the way the camera just floats in and out among all of it. There's a scene in like a club, a nightclub that is very, it's mainly fisticuffs. But then there's some knife play and there's some gunplay, and then there's some people falling from the second story onto the first floor.
Yeah.
It's beautifully, it's gorgeously shot. It's so fascinating. And that, I think that was the scene that reminded me the most of the raid, because the raid was really confined to one building like that. And I do think that the whole cast, it elevates as you said, I mean, the story's just there as an excuse really to set up these different action sequences, this sort of, man seeking redemption story that we've seen so many times in action films. But like Timothy Olyphant is in this as well. Luis Guzman, Gareth Tidball, the star of our film, Obstacle Corps, is she's in an early scene. She really takes advantage of the fact that the police have handcuffed her abusive boyfriend, and she's pretty funny. She does a great job, but the whole cast really is really invested, I think, in the type of film that's being made. Like they're all on the same page. They know what's going on, and they draw you into drama that's underneath all of this action.
Yeah, and shout out to Gareth Tidball, because I know she told us she was afraid that her scene was going to get cut, but it didn't. And I can see why. It's an important scene. I mean, is it 100% necessary? No, but it gives you a little bit of character development between Walker and his partner, and the differences in how they work. And Gareth is great, and it's so great to see her in this. And actually, we're going to talk about her a little bit later too, which is fantastic. But
she's everywhere in movies today.
She's everywhere, and well deserved. But this is one that really, action, man. This is if this is your thing, you are going to be satisfied, because you almost feel like you're tired when this is done. It's quite a ride.
Yeah, this is one of the ones. So if you have Netflix, you can watch this movie. And this is one of the ones where usually when we say that, it's like, it's a streamer. If you have it, just watch it. This would have been a great cinematic film. This would have been a super fun movie to see in cinemas. I think that, it's Netflix is lucky to have it.
Yeah, that's right. And that is Havoc on Netflix now.
Next is the latest from David Cronenberg. Karsh, an innovative businessman and grieving widower, builds a device to connect with the dead inside a burial shroud. It's the Shrouds.
Well, how excited were we? We got a Tom Hardy movie this week. We got a Pink Floyd documentary this week. And we got the new Cronenberg. Wow.
Exciting.
Yeah. Big fans, obviously, of David Cronenberg for a very long time. And the Shrouds is an interesting kind of a movie for him, because while technically it's body horror, there's no blood. There's no blood in this whole movie. It's a movie. He seems to re-examine he has the same fascinations no matter what movie he makes. And there's just a spin on the way he looks at it. So in this case, he is obsessed as a filmmaker with like the body. And this movie is obsessed with the body, but it's so much Cronenberg looking at Cronenberg's obsession with the body that, in fact, Vincent Cassel, who plays Karsh, that you mentioned in the synopsis, is clearly Cronenberg. It's an amateur filmmaker, right down to the way he has his hair styled. And he's on a date some years after his wife's death, and the woman was like, "Oh, did you get famous making industrial videos?" Which is in fact how David Cronenberg made enough money to become a filmmaker. So he's not hiding the fact that this is clearly him. And and that he creates a way for us to watch the human body rot like on a screen because
Yeah,
he has
it's a high-tech burial shroud.
yeah.
And
And
they've got these markers in the graves with screens, and then people can dial in and watch, the bodies decay. Yes, it's morbid. I think it's a fascinating premise. It's a fascinating idea, and I was hooked in by this. Unfortunately, I think the movie just doesn't fulfill that promise as well. I was a little let down by this because I was really taken in by it.
yeah, I agree with you. It's one of his films that is really talky,
Mhm.
and at the same time, so you've got this interesting premise of, but then there's a conspiracy, as is often the case in some of Cronenberg's movies, that he doesn't have any particular interest in actually solving, just in sort of sleuthing through. And there's a lot of Diane Kruger. She plays the dead wife. She plays the avatar on Karsh's phone, and she also plays the dead wife's sister, who is actively involved in kind of a conspiracy theorist. So the movie gets away from itself a little bit, and I think that it's interesting. It's interested in continuing to explore certain preoccupations that the filmmaker has. It has no interest in resolving any of them, and so I think that it's funny because when we were watching it, by the time the end comes around, I remember thinking to myself, wow, it's been 2 hours. Is he going to like resolve this at all? And he just ends.
Yeah.
So no, he does not resolve anything. So
Yeah.
it's a curious effort, this film. It reminded me a little bit of Crash, which is not one of my favorite Cronenberg films.
No, same. You also have Guy Pearce, who pops
Yeah.
up in sort of a weird role, kind of a nerdy science guy.
Yeah.
It's what happens when a director is so clearly talking to himself or
Yeah.
aiming right the writing and the camera right at himself. It does seem self-indulgent
Yes.
after a while, because you're right. Right away, you look at the actor, how he has his appearance, because I'm not even sure that Cassell is that gray. He may have, grayed up his hair a little bit as well, on top of the style
Uh-huh.
to look like Cronenberg. And some of the writing is just so pointed at some of the things that have been leveled at Cronenberg over the years, that it does just seem and it's so talky, like you
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
seems a little self-indulgent. It was very a very interesting setup, and
Yeah.
some of the shots are cool when they show this graveyard, I guess, when it's set up with these pole on the pole, they're just big poles there that have the screens in them, and then they get vandalized and they have to go in and look and try to put them back together. I mean, that's interesting. It's an interesting idea of this tech, and I think there is certainly psychological things to explore there, but it's just sort of muddles around and doesn't really go anywhere. And then the ending is very unsatisfying after 2 hours.
Yeah, when you look at his last film, which is Crimes of the Future, which it was really Cronenberg exploring the same preoccupations, right? But he did it in a way that was this bizarre sci-fi masterpiece. It was so fascinating. And this is so much less interesting in that way. It's much drier. And a lot of times in Cronenberg's really talky films, obviously, Vincent Cassel, Guy Pearce, Diane Kruger, they're very talented actors, but the dialogue is not, so that they can't help but come off as sort of stilted. Again, this reminds me of Crash, where you've got this incredible cast, but there's so much dialogue, and the dialogue is so unnatural that the performances seem like they're bad. And I don't think they are. I just think he's not going for a naturalistic delivery. But it's just not one of his more engaging films.
Right. It's not. And as big Cronenberg fans, we were disappointed with this one, because I know a lot of Cronenberg fans are looking forward to it. So yeah, this one seems like a bit of a meandering letdown, unfortunately, and that is The Shrouds, and it is out in theaters now.
Next, it's the restored version of a film that follows British progressive rock band Pink Floyd as they perform at the ancient Roman amphitheater in the ruins of Pompeii, Italy in 1971. Although the band perform a typical live set from the era, there is no audience beyond the basic film crew. It's Pink Floyd at Pompeii.
had to show the T-shirt. This one was actually from a few years ago. We got to go to that Pink Floyd exhibition, The Mortal Remains in L.A. We were going out there to visit our son, and it happened to be there at the same time. And it was so great because both of us, full disclosure, big Pink Floyd fans, especially you. They're your favorite
My
band.
favorite band. Oh, yep. And it was the coolest. The Mortal Remains. It was just room after room after room of artifacts and handwritten lyrics and video of the guys talking, and you do get a little bit of that in this movie. Of course, it's a restoration of the 1972 documentary where the band played a handful of songs of their sort of more esoteric songs, all pre-Dark Side, in the ruins of the amphitheater in Pompeii, Italy. And it's such a beautiful artistic, it's so well suited to their music. The way the camera from far away comes in so slowly that you're quite sure you're looking at a still image for a very long time, right? And all of a sudden, like, one of the crew guys will scratch his head, and you'd be like, "Oh my god, they're moving!"
Yeah.
And it shows a lot of also while they're playing, because the songs they choose, One of These Days or Careful With That Axe, Eugene, are mainly melodies. They're definitely not lyric heavy, and it's an opportunity for the camera to sort of explore cool things. But over the years, they've recut that footage to include some really sort of precious moments of the band eating lunch together. And poor Nick Mason cannot get a piece of pie, and and David Gilmour just wants some more milk. It's really kind of it's so banal that it's a fun like opposite of the sort of majestic quality of the music. And then later on, they added in cuts of the band preparing songs from Dark Side of the Moon in the studio. And I love that they do that, because I think it creates overall this perfect encapsulation of this incredible moment in time where the band changes direction so dramatically. And you get, because of the song choices of the live performance, you get a look at some of their most experimental, sort of unwieldy music. And then they're about to make a leap to their most successful sort of mainstream. I don't want to say it's not experimental, but it's certainly not unwieldy as the earlier music was. It's such a change in direction for the band. And then, of course, Dark Side of the Moon, a change in direction for music in general. It was one of the most important albums that was ever created. So I think it's aside from being a gorgeous restoration, visually and orally, it's a great time capsule of the band and of rock music.
Yeah, it's such an interesting project for them in 1971. They did these songs, they recorded these songs with no audience in the ruins of Pompeii. And those are the daylight performances. Then they went back, I guess, there were some nighttime performances that were done later in Paris that are weaved into it. And then, like you said, the Abbey Road selections as well. And then the eating, trying to get the pie and the milk. So yeah. It all comes together. It's fascinating. I mean, I think it's indispensable for Floyd fans. I mean, especially anyone who was lucky enough, like we were, to see the Nick Mason Saucer Full of Secrets solo shows that he did over the last several years. Great shows that focused on only the pre-Dark Side Pink Floyd stuff. Nick Mason really gets to be a kind of a star in this documentary. I mean, we're used to, of course, Roger Waters and David Gilmour being the centerpieces. You also get a little bit of the late Richard Wright on keyboards, and he did some vocalizing as well, so you see him. But Nick Mason really draws the interest of director Adrian Maben here. You see him just wailing away on the drums, and then they talk to him too a little bit more in the interview. So it's great. It's great to see Nick Mason getting some due there. But all in all, you're right. It looks fantastic. I know a lot of Floyd fans have seen this before. Well, I think it was available. The old cut was available on DVD for years. But it's going around. It's not only available now on VOD again, but it's in select cities. It's available on the big screen. We're lucky enough to have it here in Columbus, Ohio, where we are, and IMAX too. So yes, for sure. This is one that Floyd fans you want to see, because it's that great snapshot of the band just before they move into their own future. I mean, after Dark Side is released, everything has changed.
Yeah.
For the band, for rock music, for everything. And of course, well known, their battles became more and more heated, unfortunately. But get that early look at some great early music and just a touch of what they were in for after the release of Dark Side. I think it's a must for Floyd fans, especially on the big screen. It's a Pink Floyd. I think for this release, they changed the title because originally it was Pink Floyd Live at Pompeii, and now it's just Pink Floyd at Pompeii.
Right.
So
I think maybe a word of warning, if you're just a passing fan of Pink Floyd, or if you really think I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, but you kind of only know Dark Side and afterwards, you might get bored. This is, but if you're a longtime fan, if you like the albums that came out before Dark Side of the Moon, yes, absolutely, it's a must. It's a must.
Yeah, for sure. And that is Pink Floyd at Pompeii.
Next, Muriel and her husband Lee are about to begin a bright new life, which is upended by the arrival of Lee's brother. Muriel embarks on a secret life, gambling on racehorses and discovering a love she never thought possible. It's On Swift Horses.
Secret life, gambling and philandering. What's going on?
Yeah, this movie, it's just a quiet little film that is in theaters this week. And it's really, first of all, just gorgeous. It's just such a buttery period piece. It's so beautifully filmed. And it stars Daisy Edgar Jones and Jacob Elordi, and also Will Poulter. So Daisy Edgar Jones and Will Poulter play a married couple, or they're getting engaged at the beginning of the film. And then Elordi is Will's brother, sort of ne'er-do-well brother who just pops in and then disappears, and then pops in and disappears. And they that is used as a way to sort of set up this less than ideal marriage. Will Poulter, this is his dream, and his assumption is, of course, it's also his wife's dream. And you see her continually just sort of being torn, not wanting to set aside everything she ever wanted just to be a wife. And from his point of view, well, this is our dream. Of course, this is what we're going to do. One of the things I think, and then at the same time, Jacob Elordi is traveling the world. He's a gambler and he's a hustler and he's doing things he should not be doing. And so there's a lot of very highs and very low lows for him. And it's one of the things I like about this movie. I mean, certain things are sort of foregone conclusions in this movie, in the way that they have set up these three lives. But what I like about it is that Will Poulter, maybe because he's such a good actor, he's not the villain in this movie. He's actually probably the best person in this movie. He's actually quite accepting of his brother, and eventually is much more accepting of the situation with his wife than what we're used to seeing in movies that are set just after the Korean War. It's a very LGBTQ film, and beautifully so. It's a beautiful examination of figuring out who you are and sort of the price that you might pay, but also it's not sort of trauma porn, you know what I mean? Which again, I also think a lot of times queer films that are set in the 50s and 60s, they are. You go into it knowing something tragic and horrible is going to happen, and that's the driving force, and that's not the case here either. I think that it benefits from these three really nuanced, quiet performances. It's a very quiet film that does a lot. A lot of things happen in this movie, and I just think that it's really, really well crafted to keep you engaged and surprised by the choices that all three of the characters make. I really enjoyed this one.
And this is in theaters or streaming?
It is in theaters this weekend.
Okay, so something maybe a little different, counter programming from some of the stuff we talked about already, and that is On Swift Horses.
A crime thriller is next. When a mentally ill young man thinks he witnesses an abduction and the police refuse to believe him, he reluctantly turns to his next-door neighbor, a bitter retired security guard, to help him find the missing woman. This is Neighborhood Watch.
Jack Quaid. Jack Quaid is everywhere.
He is everywhere. Jack Quaid is, he does a really good job in this movie. This is a movie that has no business being as solid as it is. because for one thing, it's essentially a buddy comedy without the comedy, right? So Jack Quaid plays a man who is so profoundly traumatized by his childhood that he's basically incapable of living a normal life. He sees things that he's not sure are there. He sometimes hallucinates. And also he has this running commentary in his head in the voice of his abusive father, who is now dead. So it keeps him from really managing to do much of anything. It's a tough character to play because it's hard to write, direct, and perform a character with sort of mental illness without feeling cloying, with feeling authentic, when in fact the actor does not have any kind of a mental illness. And I think that Jack Quaid does a really admirable job in never being patronizing or quaint about it. You really feel for this man's dignity and his rage at others for not seeing him as a human being. I really think that it's a very, very admirable performance. And he's paired with Jeffrey Dean Morgan. So Jack Quaid's character believes that he sees a woman kidnapped, like forced into a van, and that the van drives away, and he remembers the van's license plate. But the police don't believe him. And really, neither does Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who is a disgraced campus security cop who lives next door to him. And he's an older man. And it's a great performance because you know this guy. You just know him. Maybe it's your dad. Maybe it's your neighbor. It's an older man who is starting to feel very useless, and he's bitter, and he's got a bitter sense of humor about it. And he's very condescending to other people. Like he's always catching people and, oh, I told you so. And the way Morgan creates this character, again, he's so authentic, but there's also sort of a charm about the character. And then so Jack Quaid's character, when the police won't believe him, he drags his neighbor, this disgraced security guard, in to help him solve this crime. And that's the bulk of the movie, are these two people who shouldn't be together. They are together for the basis of figuring out this crime. And that's where it feels like a buddy cop without the comedy. But the performances in the film, they're so humble that you really do get invested. The performances and the direction are much better than the script itself. And they keep you engaged, genuinely engaged, and caring about what happens to these characters. So I liked Neighborhood Watch so much more than I thought I was going to.
Yeah, even the title. I think, wasn't there a comedy just a few years ago called Neighborhood Watch?
Yes.
Vince Vaughn and Ben Stiller. That's the movie I'm thinking of.
I can't remember if that's who was in it, but yes, it is a comedy, and it wasn't very good.
Yeah, and because the title just screams comedy.
Yeah.
But anytime you can have actors elevating the material, well, then that's a good thing. And yeah, this is able to do that. So especially, the character, the Jeffrey Dean Morgan character, that can easily be so cliched.
Oh, very. Yeah.
To find some nuance, to find some edge to that. Well done. And yeah, Jack Quaid just keeps coming along. So Neighborhood Watch, and that was in theaters?
VOD.
That's VOD. So Neighborhood Watch on VOD this week.
Next is an Irish horror film. Follows a student of nursing palliative care who is plagued by trauma from her past that has a disorienting effect on her present, her relationship, her career, and her ability to function. It's Frewaka.
Good old Irish horror.
Yeah, we love Irish horror.
Yeah.
And this one is particularly interesting because it's almost exclusively in the Irish language. And that works really well because it's really a film that's rooted in the history of Ireland. It's about, the lead character is a nurse, a home health nurse, and her childhood trauma is so problematic that it sometimes sort of works its way into her everyday life. And the film's larger sort of themes are about Ireland's historical trauma and the way that the people of Ireland are still trying to get over that. And it really works well together, I think. And it wouldn't if it weren't also very creepy. And it's very creepy. The film opens in like 1972, and it's this like little small village wedding, and then shows up a whole bunch of people in black suits with like these wicker cages on their heads and a goat. And you're like, woo! Wow, this is a party I didn't know I was going to.
Right.
So it pulls from like sort of a Wicker Man vibe that works really well for it. She winds up going, the nurse, she winds up going back to this tiny town where this particular wedding took place. And so you never know exactly, do I trust the townspeople? Do I not trust the townspeople? It's beautifully filmed. It looks great. And it's just one of those very spooky folk horror vibes that just sucks you in from the beginning. I'm a big fan. I liked it a lot. It's a new Shudder movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say this one's on Shudder. So once again, a Shudder winner, Frewaka, Irish horror on Shudder now. Good one.
Next is a horror film on VOD when a robotics expert channels the grief of losing his 11-year-old son into building Robin, a fully functioning robotic doll. A series of horrific events makes it clear Robin will do whatever it takes to have his creator all to himself. It's Robin.
Ooh, robot horror, huh? Creepy dolls. And this is another one that features our friend Gareth Tidball from Obstacle Corpse, our movie, streaming now, by the way. Yeah, she's seen at the very beginning and then later in flashback. She's the mom at the beginning who suffers a great tragedy to sort of set these events in motion. But the man, the inventor, channels, as the synopsis said there, channels his grief of losing his son into this robot. And don't think Megan, because Megan had that dark humor about it, and the sequel seems to be leaning into that even more, which I love. But Megan has that real young girl, moving about just like a real person. This is a very stiff robot. It's those robotic moves, so you kind of see him move his eyes, and then the camera goes away, so you don't really see much of the robots. Don't expect those sort of movements, but it's still creepy, especially when the eyes light up in a darkened room. The director is Lawrence Fowler. There's not a there's not a writer listed for this movie, which is interesting. But you can definitely see that it's cobbled together from other movies. I mean, there's not much here that is original. It's shot pretty well. It's very measured. The action is not slam bang. You get a sense of dread, and then the kills, the bloodletting are pretty clearly telegraphed, but in a decent way. And then it does get into some decent kills with this robot. Yeah. But it's not something that you see that much. It's more of a cutaway and a quick cut to how the person gets their comeuppance, or maybe something that they don't deserve, just because this Robin robot sees a threat. So there's a little bit of a mystery involved. It's not something that's going to tax your brain very much, but the performances, including our friend Gareth, are good, and the older man who plays the inventor is pretty good as well. So it's a streamer. It's not something you're going to be thinking about much. But if you're creeped out, you like this doll kind of horror that doesn't go down that wink wink kind of humor road that Megan does so well. This plays it much more straight. It's fine. It's not great, but it's fine. And it's Robin, and that one is on VOD now.
And one more this week, a horror streamer, while performing an unauthorized exorcism on his father, an elite exorcist suspects the entity he's doing battle with might be a holy being, perhaps even God, in Shadow of God.
Can you find a new angle for an exorcist movie?
I want to give this movie points for that. It does take a novel approach to the idea that if what's trapped inside is not satanic but is divine, then whatever words the priest is saying is only giving that more power. And you'd think that's a good thing, right? Well, maybe so, but if you pay much attention, especially to the Old Testament, God maybe isn't that big a fan of ours. And so maybe he's like, okay, time's up, folks. And so I do think that that's an interesting tack, right? It's an interesting idea. One of the problems with this movie is that it just crams too many ideas into one short horror film, and it doesn't dig deep enough on any of them, so they all kind of fall to pieces. which is too bad. Mark O'Brien is the star who plays the priest, and he was the husband in Ready or Not. And so, like it's a solid performance, and actually several of the performances are solid, and including his dad, who's played by Sean Johnson, his dad, who had been a preacher, not a Catholic priest. He had been like a cult
reverend, yeah.
And his son went through a great deal of abuse at the hands of this cult, and then eventually grew up and became a priest specifically because he had a calling, but he needed to just clear away from everything else in there. And so he sort of found, a community and a future and a calling here in the Catholic Church. And so he became an exorcist, because that's what you do. Like, that's totally there are just so many things about the movie that should maybe have worked, but did not. And I think the biggest problem is that the movie betrays its budget, and also maybe the filmmaker's lack of imagination when you come to the climax. There is a very much, for example, like they don't have the money to do what they're trying to do. And there's in particular, and what they're trying to do is not very imaginative either. So like there's a very Raiders of the Lost Ark moment that actually just draws like a giggle when it's supposed to be like the big, oh no. And you're more like, oh, that was a poor decision. So the longer you watch it, the worse it is. And it's a new one on Shudder too. So it's one of the rare instances where we're giving a pass to the Shudder original today.
Yeah, although points for trying something new, trying to go in a new direction for exorcism movies. But yeah, Frewaka, the choice on Shudder this week. But the other one is Shadow of God. And I think the Schlocketeer taking the week off.
That's right.
Yeah, hopefully we'll check back in with the Schlocketeer next time to get the latest studio news and notes. So just remember, though, also still out in theaters, Sinners. And if you haven't seen it, I know, man, if you're anywhere near social media, the talk has been Sinners, and that is good because it's fantastic. And I love to see it out there, bringing in the dollars for the box office. It's one that you want to see on the big screen, man. In fact, we just got wind of, you told me there's a 70 millimeter print, right?
Yeah.
And I know we have some 70 millimeter theaters here in town where we are, and hopefully that is going to start making the rounds because I want to see it. Want to see it again anyway, and if I can see it in 70 millimeter, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I can't wait to see it. So it's a good recommendation. It's brilliant. You should go.
Yeah. So that's still out in theaters as well. But looking ahead to next week, we've got the latest from Marvel. Thunderbolts comes out next week.
Also, the horror film Rosario.
One called A Desert.
In Camera.
Also, the Gulspang Miracle. I don't know what that is, but we're going to find out about it.
And is Another Simple Favor, is that next week as well?
I think so. We just saw that the other night, the sequel to A Simple Favor, which I liked years ago. The sequel that brings back Anna Kendrick and Blake Lively and more. So we think it's next week, but we'll check on that. But until next week, what do you think about this week? The Accountant 2 or Havoc or the Shrouds, or even you still want to talk about Sinners? Heck yeah, we'll do that. You can find us. You can find us easily on the socials. It's MaddWolf Columbus. You can keep in touch. Also, MaddWolf.com is our main website. You can find all of our written reviews and some other fun stuff. So we always are ready to talk about movies. We hope you'll keep in touch. So until next time, she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Screening Room Podcast.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.